All right, the fallout from this college scam just beginning, and top-name actresses who will be appearing in court today arraigned on all of this, and just how far this entire mess went, we don't know. College consultant Andy Lockwood is with us. It would seem particularly more difficult to get into some of these Ivy League schools because they have such a fortress mentality. College is what you got to do, how you handle an interview, this is how you go through the testing and all that, and parents as well. But how did he sell himself?
Well, I can just tell you my personal experience, because we have kids also that I work with one-on-one who get into Stanford, Harvard, Yale, MIT, Princeton, etc. But virtually every week there is a parent who will say, like, so who do you know?
So many different facets of the college process that I didn't really understand in terms of exactly how to navigate the Common App, what filling out supplements meant, how important interviews were, and the extent to which we needed to go see and tour schools, and just basically trying to make my college list, because I knew the type of school I wanted to go to, but I didn't know exactly how I would come about that or what schools needed to be on my list.
College consultants and radio hosts Andy and Pearl Lockwood say more college applications are coming in, driving acceptance rates down, with selection based on far more than academics.
A kid who's got an international background, who's an underrepresented minority, who's an athlete, who's a musician, great community service, who's a legacy, all those types of categories, those are chosen for up to 2/3 to 80%.
We really love the fact that their starting point was all about finding the right fit for my daughter and helping her uncover a path.
I was generally looking up online, and I looked you up, and obviously you had extraordinary reviews.
That's where it was cool to have you to talk to. You made it a lot more relaxing and fun, because I think that's what I needed.
It relieved my wife of all the anxiety and the tension. Everything was taken care of. It was almost like, take me, wherever you want me to go, I'll go. And it turned out just perfect.
College is bargaining more than ever, says college advisor Andy Lockwood, who just penned a how to negotiate in what he calls a banner year for haggling.
Colleges themselves are scrambling to hit their enrollment targets.
Andy Lockwood is a 5-time best-selling author, speaker, and internationally renowned expert on college admissions and financial aid, whose advice has helped more than 7,907 families from coast to coast and outside the United States maximize their odds of admission to highly selective colleges and comfortably afford tuition without having to cut back on their current lifestyle or sacrifice their retirement. He is the leading expert on how to negotiate with colleges. Andy and his wife, Pearl Lockwood, own Lockwood College Prep in Long Island, New York. Pearl and Andy are talk show entrepreneurs, show hosts, and podcasters, and have been featured multiple times by local, national, and international media, such as the Wall Street Journal, Fox Business News, CBS, and even Netflix. The Lockwoods' clients include high-income business owners, student athletes, divorced and separated families, high school principals, superintendents, college professors, accountants, and lawyers who value unvarnished, occasionally blunt professional advice. Andy is the creator of the P4 system, a different, backwards, comprehensive approach to college planning that helps select families optimize their odds of admission to great colleges that will help launch their children for success post-college while paying wholesale prices, even if they think they can't qualify for any financial aid.
Call Andy, get some good advice. You really have nothing to lose, because it can only save you money on tuition. I meet people all the time who are supposedly college advisors, and what I see over and over again is that many of them collect a person's money, and the child ends up at the college that he or she probably would have ended up on his own. But in your case, I saw real results.
What is your crystal ball saying about tonight's webinar?
Oh boy, it's going to be a good one.
All right. High energy here at the Lockwood College Prep Studios down in my subterranean lair here in Long Island. Welcome, everyone. My name is Andy Lockwood, Lockwood College Prep, and I'm excited to do our webinar together. This one's going to be focused on what it takes to get in. We're going to be looking a little bit at the results from the current cycle, which is pretty much over, although there is some extensive waitlisting going on for class of 2021 kids. And I'm going to be using that information to help project what's going on for younger kids, 2022 grads of high school and younger. So looks like you can see and hear okay. I see Renee from Connecticut, Nancy from Huntington, Abby from Virginia, Terry from Steamboat Springs, just Colorado, just spoke to you the other day. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to switch to my slides. I think the presentation is going to take me roughly 50 minutes, give or take. And I will then stop and take some questions. And the whole thing should be, roughly an hour, maybe a little bit longer, I guess, depending on the questions, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and switch. All right, so if you wouldn't mind, just let me know that you can actually see these slides. There should be a little college guru guy floating on top with pajamas. And you should see the title of this presentation, How to Avoid Admissions Armageddon. So I'm going to assume you can see. It's kind of hard for me to check chat. Let me just look at my phone here. So just say yes if you can. Okay, I see a lot of. Good, okay. I see some yeses. Then I will proceed, because I don't know what I would do otherwise. Okay, so let's talk about what we're doing today. A quick overview of admissions results for current seniors, 2021 kids. A brief overview of some of the big, more important changes in financial aid as they stand as of a few months ago. How to get return on investment, college return on investment, which includes getting into schools you want to get into, as well as getting something more out of going to college than what you put in. And I will be talking a little bit about how to, if you work with a college advisor, how to get an ROA, return on advisor. So you will discover the truth about what it takes to get into a top college in today's challenging, maybe the understatement of the year, environment. How to maximize eligibility for financial aid and merit aid so that you can afford tuition for all the kids, the kiddos, without rating your retirement or cutting back on your lifestyle. And you will see how to find best fit colleges that will help your child launch for post-college success. Crazy idea, I know. You are in the right place if you're confused whether or you're stressed out about whether your son or daughter can even get into a decent school. You're freaking out about college costs, whether you can afford to send them to the college they deserve, or you're frustrated, perhaps, that you're not getting the advice from the people you would hoped would give you the advice, like your guidance counselor. I'm not bashing guidance counselors. I just am calling it like I see it. I see and hear complaints all the time about guidance counselors. Some of them are well-founded, but to be fair, some are not well-founded. But if you're frustrated, either way, this is for you. You might feel like you are lost in space. I know that it's been rebooted, but I don't know if anyone would recognize the new actors. Floating around from destination to destination. I'm going to take the SAT 3 times. No, now I'm going to switch to the ACT. I heard I should have good extracurricular activities. So you bop over to the planet of extracurriculars, et cetera, et cetera. It's very easy to get bogged down in just tactical things, but you never find your way home. And what this presentation is about is helping you come in from outer space, find a strategy, and a clear path home. However, keeping with the theme here, this presentation may be danger, Will Robinson. This may be controversial, even offensive. I don't intend any of the things that I say to come out of my mouth offensive, but I know they do occasionally. You may also discover that much of what you thought you knew about getting into college is wrong. A lot is different since 30 years ago when people our age applied to college. But unlike various people like guidance counselors and other parents who are competing with you, I don't have any agenda here other than telling you the truth as I have learned in 20 plus years of being a college advisor. You may have your own truth. So it's up to you to decide or judge. One thing, though, that is, you can't really argue this. If you don't plan, if you don't take the information that you're learning and enact a plan, then your kid may not get into the college they deserve to get in, whereas others who may not have performed as well academically do get in. That happens every year. You may self-sabotage your ability to get grants and scholarships. you might have to let your child down if she gets into the dream college that she or he was dying to go to, but you can't afford to send them. So all these are reasons that you've got to plan. You want to avoid these things. So before we start here, just take a breath, kick back, and indulge me here. Just imagine if you didn't have any stress about getting into a great college or any worries about being able to afford it. If you had the clarity and the confidence about not only what your child, but also you need to be doing now and at all times along this college journey. If you had a magic wand and you can make these things happen, how great would that be? Just imagine that were possible. And for many of our clients, it is. I get great testimonials all the time. This is from a couple years back. We had a super client, Kevin, who got into Stanford, everywhere else he applied. Rob and Stephanie were very nervous about when their friends weren't getting anything in financial aid. But then she said our packages started coming from various schools. And then the best yet was last BU. And her friends said, I can't understand how you received so much in assistance while I got nothing. I even had the FAFSA people fill out the forms, which is not recommended. So she went from being stressed to not being stressed. Client of ours got into Cornell. It's a very popular school for our clients for whatever reason. I just got this literally the other day as I was preparing these slides. Had a pretty decent year with negotiating. We had this one surprised me a little bit, to be honest, and I have surprises every year. But Brown University came up $17,000, even though we showed non-Ivy League offers to play off against Brown. So Neil and Charlene were extremely happy, and I may have been happier for them. They're really nice folks. So this is another potential outcome that that definitely made them feel less stressed. So just to get this out of the way, at the end, not in the middle at all, at the end I'm going to take a few minutes to offer you a way to get more help from us in terms of our services. But it's totally optional. There's nothing to buy. You don't even have to stay on for it. And I won't care if you drop off or you stay on. But if you are interested in getting help one-on-one, then stay on at the end, and I'll tell you how we can explore doing that. But again, there's nothing to purchase. You can leave your credit card in your pocket there. If you are new to our community, and I see a lot of people here who are relatively new to us, Pearl and I are literally a mom and pop shop. We are fortunate enough to have a decent platform. We've gotten a lot of media attention lately, but also over the years. Written a bunch of books, How to Pay Wholesale for College, which is in another rewrite right now. I've written books on the essay, on how to get into your dream college without lying, bribing, or photoshopping. And my latest book, How to Negotiate Your Crappy Financial Aid and Merit Aid Offer. These are all available on Amazon. And objectively speaking, they make terrific holiday gifts. What says Happy Thanksgiving more than a book about the college essay and its companion books? Yeah, that didn't really come out too well. Bernie's also part of our firm. Just kidding. So sometimes people say, how'd you get into this business? And I don't think it's particularly interesting, but I get this question enough, so I made a slide on it. I went to a really expensive school, which is why I looked like I hadn't eaten in 6 weeks there. My dad was a journalist, photojournalist, self-employed freelance photographer. Why is that important? Because he was very low income. And he didn't really care much about money. That's not why he went into freelance journalism. And his attitude was, don't worry about it. It's always going to work. It's going to work out. Don't worry about the debt that you're taking on between college and law school, by the way. And I didn't know any better. And I was like, yeah, I guess it will work out. Who cares? Well, you may be wondering, how did winging it work out? Racked up 6 figures of debt, but it wasn't just the debt. It was, the ensuing credit issues and being denied for apartment rentals and mortgages and the stress. Surprises to me at the time because I didn't know any better. So I kind of learned this the hard way. And Pearl and I have 4 of our own kids, and our goal is that they, and same thing for any of the families that we consult in our practice, we don't want any of our kids, yours or ours, to go through anything remotely like what I had to suffer through. Something always bugged me. This is long before I even knew I was going to be a college advisor. When I was in college, I had a roommate who came from a very poor family, apparently somewhere in Texas. His name was Jason, and somehow he had it all figured out. He had a very cool car. If you remember the old GTI at the time, he had what back then was an amazing stereo system. He was a musician, and he loved to play his guitar at level 11 right beneath my room in our house that we shared. Usually when I was about to take a nap after I got home from school, but I was going to work in an hour. So somehow he got all these toys, these creature comforts, whereas I was the guy who was the schlub. I worked all kinds of jobs in school, the pizza shop, the ice cream shop with SHOPPE. That made it classier. I was a janitor. Whatever, a lot of the other kids did not want to do their work-study shifts, and I always picked them up to make extra money. And I didn't mind doing it. I actually liked it, more or less. But somehow I didn't have it figured out the way Jason did. I thought there had to be a better way, and I didn't know anything about it until much later as I got into this field, and that's, in a way, how this field of college advising found me, not the other way around. So now we have clients who have great successes. Even this year, which was kind of a funky year, I'll talk about that. Clients get into all sorts of elite schools, each one of these on this slide. But also, schools that are not necessarily so hard to get into, or schools you may not have heard of, or some kids go to community college. I just got an unbelievably satisfying and terrific card in the mail, graduation card in the mail from a client of mine, whose name is Xander, out in Oregon, who had an incredibly circuitous road through high school. He had all sorts of demons that he had to fight, and he took some time off. And but I told his mom, "Look, I'm in this for the long haul. I don't care how long it takes him to get to college. If that's still a goal, I'm going to help you." So he ended up going to community college after he cleaned himself up, and now he's on his way to success. So my point is, I don't care whether kids get into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, or community colleges or schools that we've never heard of. It's just about helping kids launch for success. And we have clients from all walks of life, all races and ethnicities and stations in life. A lot of self-employed clients, a lot of student athletes, principals and teachers, printers, whatever. And I told you, ironically, I don't care when anyone goes to college. I just want to help them launch for post-college success. And to me, that means obtaining the college return on investment, which is comprised of 1, getting it for the lowest price, and 2, getting something more out of it than what you invested. And our approach is not right for everyone, so I mentioned that in my advertising for tonight, but our approach is different. It's not what everyone else does. Personally, I feel like guidance counselors and parents spend way too much time focusing on where are you going to college? Are you going to go to a good school? How's your college list? To me, you should be focusing on that. The focus should be not on the 4 years of college, but the 40 to 50 years afterward. Because if you spend too much emphasis on just where you're going to college, that to me is about as stupid as rushing to the airport but having no idea where the flight was going. So that's why our approach is different. It's more of a backwards approach. And I said it's not right for everyone. We break college advising down into 4 components, which we call plan, path, position, and produce. Plan means backward planning. Path means backing into a set of colleges. Positioning means something I'm going to explain a little bit more. It's an advertising and marketing term. And produce is really about the money. So that's the 4 key components of our approach at Lockwood College Prep. And again, this is not a commercial for us because I told you before, a lot of people don't agree with how we do this, but I am going to explain a little bit about this just in case you want to do it on your own or you're interested in seeking us out. Either way, the first thing we always do with kids is we sit them down and we try to figure out how they are wired. We give them an assessment. They sit with our career counselor who helps them look at how they are wired compared to other people with identical wiring, who report very high levels of job satisfaction, meaning their jobs don't feel like jobs. Don't feel like work, and they can make a living. They get off the old mom and dad payroll. Isn't that weird? If you think that sounds like a good goal, give me a yes in chat, and I'll check it out in a minute. Getting off the full ride mom and dad scholarship. The second component is path. So we back into a list of colleges that are reputable across, a cluster of majors that match up with how you're wired. Plus other mainstream factors, such as, is the school, a huge rah-rah school, small or medium? Where's it located? Of course, do you like the hoodie and the mascot, the colors? That's really important. Our daughter Lizzie emphasized that many times this year as she went through the college process, her senior year of high school. And what happens if you fail to plan? I've already kind of given you a little taste, but here's some more statistical horrible things to chew on. 75% of kids change majors, or maybe even 80%. That's not so bad, but if you do it a couple of times, you're going to be like, oh, welcome to the 6-year plan at $75,000 per year extra. That stings a little bit. Or even worse, and this is even before coronavirus, it's so easy to graduate college with a degree that helps you get nowhere. Employer polls talk about all the time, like 93% of employers, for example, think that kids are not anywhere equipped to work in the workplace unless they're working in jobs that don't require college degrees, like at Starbucks or Chipotle's. So do you see why we can't afford just to wing it? You've got to have a plan. Let me know in chat if you agree. I'll take a quick sip of water here. And I see some agreement. That is good. So let's continue on. The third component of the 4-part system, the 4 Ps, plan, path, position. Let's look at what's going on this year. There was a huge increase in overall applications, including early applications. Tufts, Harvard, Cornell, most competitive schools saw increases of 20 to 30-something%. Colgate saw 102%. I haven't seen a bigger increase yet. But you've got to understand that this is what's happening currently in the landscape. I think next year is going to be similar, maybe not as bad, but there's been a huge uptick in applications for a few reasons. One, I think people feel better because their stock market investments are going up. Maybe their 529s or their other investments. Real estate market's been incredibly hot, so it's easier to sell. It's easier to borrow because the interest rates are very low. It's giving people more confidence. There's been a huge increase because colleges were extremely nervous when coronavirus hit, so a lot of them doubled down on their marketing, including reaching out to kids in other parts of the country and even the world. There's been an uptick in international students applying right after January, when was that, 6th, whenever the election was, once Biden was elected. And it was perceived that the Biden administration was going to be a lot more hospitable to international students. And, of course, so many colleges went test optional, which encouraged a lot of kids to just throw in a bunch of extra applications. Like, all right, I'll apply to Harvard. Why not? Interestingly, applying test optional did not necessarily help kids get in. That's the preliminary data that I have seen. So I've seen stats like at University of Pennsylvania, 70%, maybe more, of kids who got in submitted their scores. And Georgetown, 93% of kids who submitted their scores got in. So you still, if you're gunning for a competitive school, even schools that are slightly easier than those two to get into, you're going to be competing with a lot of kids. At least it looks like at least 70-75% of kids who are submitting scores. So keep that in the back of your noggin there. Now, if you're not going test optional, that would make every other. If you are going test optional, that would make every other part of your application more important than before. So even if you are submitting your scores, I believe, just based on my discussions with other admissions officers, is that because of the new sort of easier grading that a lot of high schools are bestowing upon their kids because of Zoom classes and all that, it's harder for admissions officers to figure out how well prepared or well equipped kids are to succeed in college. So I think teacher recommendations are going to be a little bit more important this year. It's going to be more parsing of the transcripts, particularly pre-COVID. It's going to be more important to demonstrate interest, because colleges really care about the yield, which is the ratio of kids that they admit versus who actually matriculate. So if not enough kids matriculate, if they turn down their admissions offers, that's bad. So for the college on so many fronts, including monetarily, or I should say financially for them, because that indirectly hurts the equivalent of their credit rating. So when they go to build, another $60 million aquatic rock climbing wall, only for certain ethnicities, the way they're doing at Cornell apparently, which is amazing to me. They usually, they don't do it out of their cash. They float a bond issue. So demonstrated interest, what that does specifically is convinces these colleges that if they admit you, then you are likely to come. So once visiting starts, well, it has started up again, but once college visits increase, that's a way to demonstrate interest. And there's other ways, including attending their online sessions, opening their emails, clicking on the links in the email, where you go from that link. I'll describe that a little bit more. Another way to demonstrate interest is by writing a good essay in response to the essay prompt, why are you applying here? That is critically important. That might be a supplemental essay that some colleges ask you in addition to the common application essay. A lot of kids were kind of stumped by when things shut down, and they had a lot of stuff going on in school, but then once things slowed down or even stopped, a lot of extracurriculars got canceled. They were like, now what? Our kids need to be able to answer this question, like, what'd you do during the shutdown, in ways other than, well, I played a lot of video games and I just FaceTimed my friends and I studied more. This is a great question to answer, not only for getting into college, but also for life. I think a lot of people interviewing for internships as well as jobs will try to figure out a kid's character by asking what they did during the pandemic. This past cycle, there was a special essay about coronavirus, about any type of hardship caused by coronavirus. I don't know if that's going to be on this year's common application that's going to come out in August. But it seems that only the families or the applicants who had a severe disruption from coronavirus needed to write these essays. So so specifically, it could be people who had a parent get sick and they had to step it up and start being the adults or the caretaker. Some people asked me this past cycle, should I write an essay about how I couldn't do any extracurricular activities? I said, I don't think that's going to give them any insight, because so did everyone else. The other 3 million people applying to college. So we'll see about that when the common application comes out. Here's the deal, though. Like, just to go to the 30,000 foot level here, the main issue or the main question, even though it's not even written on the common application, is why should we take you instead of these other 30,000? That's an arbitrary number, because a lot of colleges got 50 or 60,000 applications. Some of the big state schools, like out in California, got more than 100,000 applications. So why should we take you compared to these tens of thousands of other identical kids? That is the question. And that's why I say that getting to college is not a meritocracy. It's all about marketing, how you market yourself. So that's what I mean by position. A classic advertising example of positioning, which I was lucky enough to hear about from the founder of Avis. I used to bartend in between college and law school, and Calvin Barris and his wife Avis had a condo in the Four Seasons Hotel where I bartended, and we got to talking once, and I said, I thought that your campaign, this is after like a year of overpouring his martinis, where I got enough courage to say, I know nothing about advertising, but I thought that the Avis campaign about we're number 2, we try harder, was so interesting. Like, what was the thought process behind that? And he said, well, our ad guys knew that we couldn't compete with Hertz. They were the behemoth. And so we decided to try to figure out if we could make that a strength. So you see here, they explain that. They hit you over the head with this. When you're not the biggest, you have to try harder. You can't have dirty ashtrays or empty gas tanks or this and that and the other thing. That is what the college application has to be like. You've got to emphasize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. And that's what I mean by positioning. So how do you position for admission? By the way, are you finding this helpful, guys? Because I know this is not the same type of stuff you typically hear if you go to these high school presentations. So let me know. Hopefully you are finding this helpful. Let me know in chat, and I'll just take one more quick break. I can't see anything yet just because I'm in my screen here, but I'm looking at my phone. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Great. Okay. All right, so how do you position yourself to maximize your odds of admission? Well, understand that what gets judged is actually on the record from 9th grade forward, even earlier if you take advanced classes. It's not just in 10th grade when you have your college meeting with your guidance counselor and you're like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me about all this stuff 2 years ago? Most high schools don't have a policy of not meeting with their kids until 11th grade, which is crazy. So I don't know where you are in the timeline because we had 190 people sign up for this webinar with 150 spots. So hopefully no one's angry at me. But understand that the whole body of work starts from 9th grade, maybe even earlier. And there's an academic component. The big three are your actual grades, your test scores, although that's really number 3, and rigor, meaning how many APs and IBs. Extracurricular activities, of course, are very, very important from 9th grade forward. Out-of-school activities, summer stuff, and I mentioned before, recommendations. Then you've got your essays, your interviews, and demonstrating interest. Those are the big ones here in terms of how to maximize your odds of admission. And you can't blow off any of these things if you are trying to, 10x or multiply your odds of getting into the colleges that you want to get in. This is what it takes here. Understanding taking the hardest courses possible, best grades. That in and of itself is roughly 60% of the equation. The other 40% is the stuff underneath GPA test scores and rigor. The other 40% includes your extracurriculars, your recommendations, your activities, any awards that you've won, stuff that makes you stand out. Not just academically. It could also be in other ways. So let's talk about atypical activities because there's a big difference between typical and atypical. So it's great if you're in a club at school, but it's atypical and much more special to found a club. It's great to participate in a cancer walk and do those types of things. I should say cancer research walk because most people are not in favor of cancer. Did I mention this is a free workshop? Free, non-refundable workshop? I thought so. Founding a charity, much different. Being on a team versus being captain or named to be all league. Someone who likes to write versus someone who's self-published, a book or 2 books. Someone who likes to draw versus someone who exhibits their art in the local library or something. I've had these. By the way, these are all actual examples from kids that I've worked with one-on-one in our practice. What can you come up with? What can you come up with that's atypical that's going to help you stand out? Everybody can do that in my experience. I've never once met a kid, had a client that could not come up with something to stand out. I've given this case study now for a couple of years because I haven't come across a better one that's just more compelling. We worked with twins a couple of years ago. They're currently in college, finishing up their last year. And they were very introverted and shy. And their mom was not, but she was very stressed out because they identified a really super hard competitive school to get into, and they didn't really stand out at all. They had good grades, not necessarily blow your socks off grades and scores, but good. We had so many painful discussions over months about what they could do. It'd be like, hey guys, what about the organic garden project where you were going to take photographs of it? And they'd be like, so I'm sparing you that. But then one day we had a brainstorm. And Julie, the mom, gives me more credit about this than I think I deserve. But for purposes of this little story, I'll tell you, she thinks that I encouraged her boys to get involved or step it up and get involved with and take the reins of a program to sort of groom junior middle school kids for robotics in the high school. So to their credit, they did that. But then the school year ended. This is their junior year. And I was like, hey, guys, well, now what? Is it over? Or is there a way to continue on? And they're like, so sorry about that. Non-refundable free workshop. And I said, well, why don't you see if you can get, you can propose that they continue on with you. Maybe they pay a fee, donate to the robotics team or something. And that I take 100% credit for, by the way. No problem there. And because I said, like, what if they have an interest? That they shouldn't just have to stop artificially. So to their credit, they created a summer program out of thin air on their own initiative. And ladies and gentlemen, here's what happened next. They got on local media. They got in the local newspaper. They got on the local TV. And we shamelessly packaged up all this stuff, sent it up as a separate email to Cornell, which is where they applied early decision, and this is what happened. They got in. They were in shock. They had no expectations. Never could have done this without you. You finessed so many aspects of this process. Finesse, by the way, not a word usually associated with Andy Lockwood. So this is very awesome. And then the follow-up text was that the Cornell admissions person said that her twins had exceptional applications and should be particularly proud. Guess who made all this possible? We're so grateful. Okay. So that is a demonstration of how to position. Even if it's not obvious, and this took months to come up with this idea, shouldn't normally take that long, full disclosure. But my point is that even kids who are painfully shy and introverted can still come up with stuff to help them to step out of their comfort zone and help them achieve a goal. And that is yet another life skill, not a get into college skill, but it's a life skill to step out of your comfort zone, learn how to advocate for yourself, and go for it. And I'm so proud of these guys and so thankful that Julie trusted us to handle this for her. And anyone can do it, in my experience. All right, here's a little bit of insight that you'll never see anywhere else, because this is actually a sheet that was taken from a manual that was put together by a business associate of mine who's more of a mentor than anything, than a partner. He was on the admissions committee of Princeton University for 30 years and director of financial aid for 30 years. I'm showing it to you just so you understand that competitive schools, and this is not just Princeton by any means, they all do this, look at far more than just your grades and your scores. If you look at this, you may want to take a screenshot of this if you haven't already. Achievement, talent, leadership, So we all know about leadership, by the way, because everybody apparently who applies to college is a leader. There's no followers. But look on the right side there. You've got maturity, motivation, leadership, integrity, reaction to setbacks, concern for others, self-confidence, initiative, independent. Sometimes that's interviews, sometimes that's recommendations. Not every school interviews anymore. So they're still looking for this. They're still looking for non-academic information, how you are revealed. And that's why I say the character is the new SAT. So many schools are test optional these days, but they're not character optional. Character's the new SAT. Don't forget that. Thank you, Lori and Felicity, and all, for bringing this to the forefront. By the way, I think that's a good thing. If you've got a good kid who tries to do the right thing, that's an edge, and that's got to come out in the application. All right, now let's talk a little bit about why kids with lesser academic credentials do get in, while kids with greater credentials get deferred and denied. I said this before, it's not a meritocracy. There's so much that goes into college admissions besides grades and scores. We already looked at the personal stuff. But look, let's be honest here. It's also about race, ethnicity, whether your child is a legacy, whether you're a recruited athlete, and a bunch of other categories. And sometimes when you look at Naviance, if you guys are familiar with that, you look at who gets in and who doesn't get in from your high school, and there's always outliers that you can't really explain. And that, to me, that creates more confusion instead of more clarity. But you have to understand that it's not a meritocracy to get in. Colleges have their own agendas, such as more first-generation students, more diversity, that was big this year, more majors that no one majors in anymore. Colleges love parents who pay full pay. If you can pay full price, you should show that on your financial aid forms. Even if you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, we always recommend file your forms to show financial strength. And then there's the yield, which I mentioned before. That's the ratio of kids who get in versus who matriculate. So if too many kids say, thanks, but no thanks, buddy, then that is not good for that school, financially speaking, and for other reasons. So this past cycle, University of Miami and Tulane, those are good schools. That, by the way, they didn't used to be so hard to get into. But we saw a lot of kids who should have gotten in, didn't. And the only reason that makes sense to me, and of course my other colleagues throughout the country, is that Tulane and Miami don't want to waste, and it's not only these schools, by the way, do not want to waste spots on kids who are not going to come, because that's yield, the yield protection that I was talking about in the last slide. So how do you overcome that? Well, you've got to be convincing that you do want to come. One way to convince them is to go early decision. Tulane is notorious for trying to flip kids who are 2021 who are early action, like this past year, 2021 kids who were early action. Once December 15th rolled around, maybe even a few days earlier, Tulane started bombarding early action applicants with offers to convert their applications to early decision 2. If you don't know what those are, I can talk about it in the questions. But why do you think they do that? Well, the answer is that most early decisions come out December 1st and through December 15th. So Tulane knows that that's when kids who don't get into their ED school are most vulnerable, and that's why they start bombarding them right around then with the pressure / offer to go early decision 2, which is a later form of early decision, with them. And they've gotten criticism from many groups about doing this, the hardball tactics, and they've also gotten praise behind the scenes by other colleges who they compete with. So I'm not here to praise or to criticize. I'm just here to tell it the way it is. Non-refundable free workshop. Okay, still funny. So let's talk about how to demonstrate interest. I mentioned this before, but I don't know if I emphasize how creepy it really is. So yes, visiting campuses, those are starting to happen again. The tours, meeting your reps in high school, also starting to happen again. Attending online sessions where you sign in, following these colleges and the admissions departments on social, TikTok and whatever. They are watching whether you open your email, and then they're watching where you go from there, from that email. What are you clicking on? If you're applying as a business major and you click on, let's say, engineering or English, or you spend a lot of time on the school's websites in different areas, and you say that what you're majoring in, that might actually count against you. That may not be convincing. So understand that it's creepy. And you should understand that the method that we recommend is the Eddie Haskell method of college admissions. You want to kiss their you-know-whats. Show them the love. All right, final comments here. It's really important to have a balanced list, meaning don't just apply to super hard schools. We had a couple clients this year who insisted on doing that. It was like a tug of war with them for me to force them to round out their lists. Be very strategic about how you use early decision. Do you use it on a long shot where you have a 2% chance of getting in, or are you better off using it as a 50-50 on a 50-50 school? Because if you don't use it, then you may not get in there either. I mentioned this before, the recommendations. So if you haven't thought about them yet and you're a junior, definitely get those locked down now. Core subjects, teachers are going to have really nice things to say about your intellectual curiosity, your character, your hopefully your participation, that type of thing. And it's not just the essays. The whole application needs to be as perfect as possible. One final comment here. I saw this a lot this past year for a few reasons I'm going to describe. Don't be misled by Naviance. So not all of you have Naviance, but most people usually on these webinars do have Naviance. So I want to talk to you about the difference between what Naviance considers as a college software versus what admissions officers consider. So Naviance considers your GPA and your SAT, whereas admissions officers consider those things plus another 20 factors. Naviance considers you or your child versus other students from your high school for the most part, whereas other admissions officers don't have quotas. I know that sounds odd. I told you this might be, a different truth than you believe. But you talk to any admissions officers, they will swear up and down they don't have quotas. You're certainly compared against other kids from your high school, but there were no limits or minimums for kids from certain high schools. And admissions officers instead will compare each student versus everyone from the whole pool. And yeah, sometimes that means they admit more kids from a certain high school than others, but that's not because they say, well, we got 17 spots from, blah, 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 high school this year. So just understand that. So that's why we don't personally use Naviance in our practice. What I do use instead is the software that was created by the gentleman I mentioned before, who's on the admissions committee at Princeton for 30 years. And his software is designed to replicate as close as possible what admissions officers look at. So there's actually 5 categories. This is the first 3. This is actually from my daughter's my senior, Lizzie. So if you run into her, don't tell her I'm doing this. And the purple, blue, and green categories mean roughly 90% chance of getting in purple. Blue means 75% chance, give or take, and green means 50-50. And then the next 2 categories are about a 33% chance in the orange and a 2 to 12% chance in the red. And I put that that box there so you understand, so you can focus on how the categories. There's a lot more under the hood here, but the categories that it grades you on here, the software, is grade point average, SAT or ACT scores, level meaning the rigor, AP classes, and activity means all sorts of stuff, including whether you've won any types of awards, what level of award, high school level, county level, international, national. Activity also means, are you a leader in certain, are you a president or a co-president or something like that? So in this case, my daughter's case, she did not get into any of the schools in the orange and the red. In the green category, the 50-50 category, she got into 2 out of 3. And in the solid to strong, she got into 2 out of 3. And she's attending one of those. And the purple category, she actually got waitlisted at a couple of those. And that was what a lot of kids experienced this year. They got waitlisted or sometimes even rejected by schools that were their safeties. In most cases, at least with our clients, no one really cared because they got into the schools they were trying to get into. So I do feel that in terms of people who are really in the know about how admissions works, the surprises the parents experience weren't necessarily as great as on our end. We have more of a global perspective where we can compare year to year. So overall, our clients did really well. I think they got into at least one of their top 3 choices again this year. They didn't do so well on the easier level, but I don't think anyone cared. It was sort of no harm, no foul. So that's why we don't use Naviance. And this is there's a whole lot more to talk about this, but I've got a lot to get through here, and I promise I would try to keep this to about 45-50 minutes. So let's talk quickly about the essay. How important is the essay? Best guess, 10 to 15% of the application. So not particularly important unless you're on the fence. There's a main essay on the common application. What is the purpose of that? The purpose is to tell the admissions people something that they can't see from the rest of your application and to be interesting. It's really dual purpose. Tell something interesting that we don't know from the rest of your application, no matter what the question is. The supplemental essays have a different purpose. Those purposes are usually to demonstrate why that school is a good fit for you. Tell us specifically. Where a lot of kids fall down is they're not specific enough. When should you get the essay done? Hands down, over the summer, not in the fall once school starts up again. Here's some big mistakes that people make. Number one, I read essays a lot that kids have worked on in their English class, and I'll read the essay, and I'm like, okay, that was interesting. Which prompt, you get 7, a choice of 7. Which prompt did you answer? Oh, the teacher didn't tell us which prompt to write about. Okay. So always reread the prompts. Read them and then reread them. Another big essay mistake or fail is just being superficial, just trying to talk about stuff you think they want to hear as opposed to going deep about yourself. No actual insight. Another one is, this is a little bit more difficult. So in our practice, when I work with kids one-on-one, I'd be saying, look, I think the essay is great. Now I'm going to show your essay to one of our former admissions officers from super competitive schools, by the way. And they pick up on stuff that I don't always pick up. So that happened last summer. I thought an essay was pretty good. And Christina, who was working with us at the time, she said to the student, look, essay is great, but your tone is a little defensive. I think you need to drop, and she gave specific examples, and make this not an apology, but to show how you emphasize how you overcame the obstacle more so. So tone is really important, and that means not only what to say, but what not to say. Oh, easy one here. Too many chefs in the kitchen. You've got to write your essay, get as good as you can get, and then show it to one or two people, including mom or dad, whom you trust, maybe a teacher at high school. But don't do that in the beginning. Don't write by committee. It never ends up well. And I mentioned this before. You can't be boring. Your essay doesn't have to be earth-shattering. You don't have to have cured coronavirus or other diseases. It can be about something small, but just interesting. It's got to be about something interesting. Admissions officers read thousands, literally. Like the ones who work for us, they read 1,000 applications each year. Each application had 4 to 6 essays, anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So let's call it 5,000 essays a year for 5 years. They're looking for something that's interesting. They're looking for something that's going to break up the monotony. It's very hard reading essays. Some tips from Papa Hemingway, Ernie Hemingway, good close personal friend. Get them done over the summer so you will avoid severe pain in the fall. Don't use a 6-syllable word when a 2 or 3-syllable word will suffice. Do not write and edit at the same time. I am guilty of this, probably some of these other ones too, but this is a big one, at least in my book. You've just got to vomit out your essay and then let it sit and then go back and edit it and hack away at it. If there's a 650-word limit, you can write 1,300 words and then come back. Don't edit at the same time. A lot of times I work with kids, I'll say, okay, get me the draft. They show me the draft. They're like, I had a problem with word count. I'm like, no, it's just a draft. There's no problem with word count on a draft. There's a problem with word count after we're done editing if we can't get it under 650 words, which is never the case. So don't write and edit at the same time. You do one, then the other. Similarly, you need to allow time in between drafts. You can't just rush it out the last minute. We get kids ideally work on the essays at the end of June, finish up with a common application essay in July, hopefully, and then the common application supplemental essays in August because the common app comes out in August 1st. And then there's just tuning it up in September and getting ready to file, getting ready to apply. That's the ideal calendar. Another great tip that I sometimes use, after you've written and edited something, go back and read it, not to yourself, hear yourself, listen to the words. You'll pick up more stuff that doesn't sound right. So read it aloud. Hope these tips help. All right, we're almost done here, guys. Hopefully we're still good. You guys okay? You hanging in there? Good stuff. Let me know in chat. Because now we're talking about the money. There's types of aid. There's Kool-Aid, different types. And then there's non-refundable free workshop. Okay. Then there's the need-based aid, which is based on filling out financial aid forms. There's merit-based aid, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. There are strategic things for high-income business owners who can't qualify for need-based aid. We have a lot of those in our practice, and they sometimes save even more than families who get scholarships. So if you don't think you're going to qualify for anything and you own a business, you might be wrong. Then there are outside scholarships, which I personally am not an expert in, but that's one of the core components of our services because we have a great colleague of mine. Her name is Jean, who specializes in helping kids find scholarships. So really quick, because I told you I was not going to focus too much on financial aid on this presentation. Need-based aid is based on income and assets and your ability to pay. And assets usually means where you have it saved, not how much. It's not about how much you have saved, it's where. Some assets penalize you more than others, including student assets, money saved in your kids' accounts. The most common applications are the FAFSA, which is used by every college, and then the CSS Profile, which is used by roughly 400 colleges, and that's in addition to the FAFSA, not in lieu of the FAFSA. The rules are complicated and they don't make sense a lot, and you may not qualify for need-based aid, and that's actually not a bad thing, even though it might be a temporary, illusory setback. It's not a real setback. And the rules are changing. They've been announced. They're changing in 2023, and I don't really like all the rules changes, so I have a little bit of time to talk about that here. But the summary is the key term is the expected family contribution. That's how much the government expects you to be able to pay for college. It's screwy. Income is the most important factor in calculating that expected family contribution. So the higher your income, the higher your expected family contribution. And currently, income means all income, taxed and untaxed. Going forward in 2023, it's going to mean certain income and not all untaxed income. And we'll see how that shakes out. I mentioned this before. Expected family contribution is what they think you can pay. Spoiler alert, nobody likes their EFC. Assets are also part of the expected family contribution, but they're penalized far less than income. Income is way more important than how much money you have saved. So if your income's too high to qualify, it doesn't really matter where your assets are. That's what I'm saying. I mentioned this before. Child assets penalize you more than parent assets. So what I mean specifically, custodial accounts, UTMA or UGMA accounts, penalize you far more than parent assets. 529 accounts are considered parent assets officially. Unofficially, we've seen some colleges treat them as child assets, which is much worse, which reduces your eligibility, which is bad. And yet some assets, some types of savings are totally exempt. Bet you'd like to know those, wouldn't you? What doesn't count against you? What are the loopholes? Well, I wish we had more time. Wouldn't you like to know? Would be nice. All right, fine. Yes. Yes, I will tell you. So there are approximately 4.5 shelters or things that don't count against you in terms of assets, types of savings that don't count against you. And they're fun to discuss, but I'm just going to tell you right now, they may not pay off. It may not, and what I mean by that is don't go moving your money around and putting it into financial instruments that you don't really understand if it doesn't pay off. I talked to a client, I think it was a week ago, who was telling me that I talked to another college advisor, someone who I actually knew, because I strong-armed her into telling me who it was, out in Los Angeles, and he had been pushing her to purchase an annuity in order to shelter money from the financial aid formulas. And I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit more about the schools you were applying to, and more importantly, before that, tell me what your income was. And she said, well, our income last year was about $450,000. I said, okay, there's no way you can qualify for need-based aid. So it doesn't matter where you have your money. That's like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. The only person who's going to benefit from you buying an annuity is that guy, Brian, I won't say his last name, who is selling you the annuity. It's a commission for him. So that's outrageous, and that actually gives our industry of college advising a pretty bad name. So you have to understand that just because you have money saved in the wrong places and you're thinking about putting them into an exempt type of asset, it doesn't mean that that's going to work for you. Because there's other factors. The stars have to align. So what are the shelters? What are the exemptions? Well, the primary residence does not count against you when you're filling out a FAFSA. If you do it yourself, this is a service that we do for people. But if you do it yourself, you'll see currently that the primary residence should not be included as an asset for your financial aid eligibility. By the way, if you're doing a CSS profile, it does count. So that's why I put the asterisk there. Your retirement accounts are supposed to be exempt entirely. A lot of people make this mistake. They include their retirements in the net worth of their assets, and that's a big mistake. So those are totally exempt. Exemption number 3, life insurance with cash value. So that is exempt across the board on all financial aid forms. But again, if your income knocks you out of the box, you shouldn't even think about doing life insurance or anything that I'm describing here. And if you are wondering, is there a magic ceiling or a number, an income number, that if you cross it, you're not going to qualify? The short answer is no, unfortunately. But it's an easy analysis, for anyone who knows the rules. And then annuities, those are exempt entirely on the FAFSA and partially, depending on the type of annuity, on the CSS profile. So these are the 4 legal shelters in the financial aid form: is primary residence, retirement accounts, cash value life insurance, and annuities. And the 4.5 is business owners. Currently, under the rules, most businesses are worth 0. There's a question on the FAFSA that says, what's your business worth if you own a family business? And I'm just going to tell you really quick here, in the interest of time, most people, the answer for that is 0. So don't inflate the value of your business. Even if you think it's worth more, you can think so privately. Don't think think that on the FAFSA in writing. You want to be a pauper on the FAFSA. And I mentioned this before. There's different rules for depending on which financial aid forms you are filling out. For more resources, if you want a really comprehensive version of a good book to read, don't buy the 2020 edition of the book on the left, Paying for College by Cal Chaney. He's great. I read his book many times when I first got into this field about 20 years ago. There's a new book coming out. I just heard him say the other day on a webinar that's going to have more of the changes. My book is very non-textbook-like. His book is very textbooky. Mine is not. It's called How to Pay Wholesale for College. I need to update my book also because of the changes. So right now it's in the 5th edition. Both these books are available on Amazon. And my book makes the best gift for sure. Experts have said in this non-refundable workshop, free workshop, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's talk about some of the changes in the FAFSA before we wrap up here. This happened in January 2021. It's going to take place in 2023, which means there's a lot of stuff to be hashed out. One of the changes was whether you have 1 kid in college or 4 kids in college, your expected family contribution won't change. That's ridiculous. That used to not be the case. If you had 2 kids in college, you would double your eligibility, or in other words, have cut in half your expected family contribution. Somehow, because of retiring Senator Lamar Alexander, that's changing. So that is terrible right now, potentially, but I think that's going to be undone. Under the current rules, the parent that fills out the financial aid applications in a divorce or separation situation is the custodial parent. And the custodial parent currently means the parent that the child resides with the majority of time. Okay? In 2023, that all changes. The person who's supposed to fill out the FAFSA in 23 will be the person, the ex-spouse, who is supporting the kid, who's taking the kid as a deduction on their tax returns. So right now that's not the way it works, but that's changing in 23. I'm not a big fan of that change either. Here's a good change. It used to be, currently it is, I should say, that if a grandparent takes like 20 grand and pays for college, that reduces the eligibility of the kid for next year. So if a grandparent has a 529, for example, okay, now, in 2023, that won't be the case. There will be no reduction in eligibility. So that's a good change. I don't currently think there's going to be any changes to the CSS profile. So it might be the case that if you have 2 kids in college or 3 kids in college at a college that requires a CSS profile, they still may give you some credit for that and improve your eligibility that way. I said this before, there's also changes to income and untaxed income and all that. A little too early to talk about that. So final thoughts here. There's more merit aid than need-based aid. So if you don't qualify for need-based aid, that's really not a big deal because there's more aid that's based on grades and scores and extracurriculars and other things, and how you stack up compared to other kids that you're competing with. Colleges will bribe kids to come. The average tuition discount is now way more than it was last year. It's now close to 56% for private colleges. You should check this out for yourself. Each college publishes a net price calculator on its website. If you are looking for merit aid, if you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, your best bet is applying to colleges that want your kid, that are in the, where your kid is in the top 10 to 20% of the cohort they're competing with, not the colleges that he has to beg, borrow, and steal and scratch and claw his way to get into. All right? Pretty common sense there, but a lot of people don't get that. And whatever aid you get, you might as well try to negotiate it, because you never know. It doesn't hurt to try. They're not going to rescind their offer. There's a lot of inconsistency in the net price calculators. So among each other. So first of all, they're garbage in, garbage out. But also a calculator on one college's website might ask for a bunch of information that a calculator on a different college's website does not ask for. So play around with them, save them. If you get a lousy offer a few months later that's totally inconsistent with the calculation that you did on their website, maybe that's an argument for you. So we're going to wrap up here with negotiation tips. These are all outlined in my book, but I'll give you the short version right here. Your best bet is giving them information they don't know about. So if you have a kid graduating college in 2022, they're looking at your income from 2020. Your financial aid award is not going to come until 2022, but it's going to be stale. It's going to be based on ancient information. So if you are self-employed and your business went south, or if you were employed as a W-2 employee, but you had a pay cut or a layoff, you had unusual expenses or something, like you had a divorce and you had a lot of legal fees or medical bills or something like that, those are examples. Another one of my favorite things that can help you negotiate is if you had offers from other competitor colleges. Even sometimes if they're not competitors. I showed you the windfall that my client Neil got and Charlene got at Brown. Brown gave an extra $17,000 after we showed them offers from non-Ivy League schools. So it's best when they're competitors, but don't just limit yourself. Always go for it. Show them other offers. Some schools have actual forms to fill out. Some just say email us. It's all very clear on their website. You can always call if you can't figure it out. But don't be arrogant and pissed off. You get more flies with honey than vinegar. Okay, so be nice. So just to sum up here, here's how we put it all together. We take a backwards approach to help kids launch for success post-college. And that college return on investment consists of getting it for the lowest price and getting more out than what you put in. And the return on an advisor, if you are looking to explore working with us, the idea is that we will get you more than what you invested to work with us. And we get great comments all the time. Our reviews have been terrific. Dr. O'Hara, who's now superintendent, he was a principal of a high school, and we were working with him, who said, I know a lot of college planners who promise results but don't deliver. In your case, I got real results. That is so cool. Our clients, Scott and Barbara, last year, you thought there was no way they would possibly qualify for anything, but they did get an offer. But ultimately, because Scott, to his credit, kept going back for more because we thought they made a mistake, ultimately, he was able to increase the award. When you add it all up, two kids, 4 years worth of increase, $132,000. So I never really advertise this because I think it's too disbelievable, right? It doesn't seem like it passes the giggle test. We have clients get into all sorts of schools, including Shreya here, who you can guess where she got in. She got into University of University of Pennsylvania. So our program consists of these 4 parts: plan, path, position, produce, the 4 Ps. And it's not right for everyone, particularly kids who aren't going to take the advice. Sorry I had to say that, but you can't want it more than your kids. So I'm not really sorry. And, we're not a cheap El Cheapo operation because of the results that we produce. Right? I just showed you one of our clients got $132,000. So right now you have 2 paths. You can either wing it on your own, which can work out. It just seems to be a lot harder to do. Or you can follow a system that is tested and proven. So what I'm happy to do, because you've now sat through all this, we usually charge $499 for a 20-minute phone call to give you the best advice I can, and possibly to explore working together. I mean, frankly, that's what we're looking for right now before we stop taking on new clients. I am about to shut down my one-on-one client advising, but I have 3 terrific advisors who I supervise who work with us. And you can either click on the button right here, I think it's black on the screen, or you can go, for some reason that doesn't work, go to getcollegeplan.com. I just will say one quick thing, that if you have already been to one of my webinars and you got this offer, theoretically this site is not going to work for you, because I can't do multiple freebies. So it's one freebie per client, and there's a whole lot of you guys. There's only one of me, so that's why I have to do it that way. But if you have a question and you can't get on the site, shoot me an email. My direct email is ceo@lockwoodcollegeprep.com. And now I'm going to finish off the slides and come back on camera and go through the questions that I know have been coming in. I've been watching them out of the... All right. So Pearl has been marking all the questions that came in. So I'm just going to go through those. And if you have something that you want to ask me right now, this is the time to do it. So here we go, starting from the oldest. Sharon, how important are AP test scores? More important than last year because there are no more SAT subject tests. So 4s and 5s are really, really good. It all depends on what schools you're applying to, of course, but important. Deborah, what's your advice for a junior who needs recommendations from teachers but hasn't set foot in school for over a year? Start sucking up and forging those relationships, because you will need to have good recommendations. Paula, can you mention potential student athletes? Not sure if that's a question, but you do get an edge in admissions if you are a recruited student athlete. I look at the process of playing in college or of marketing yourself, of doing the recruiting. I just did an interview, which is now on our podcast, which is called the College Planning Edge. So if you are a podcast person, go to Apple Podcasts and search College Planning Edge. I interviewed a friend of mine who's a lacrosse coach, Dave Kotowski, and he played 3 sports at Brown. So he knows a lot about all sports in general, particularly recruiting. And he says recruiting is a contact sport. What he means by that is you've got to do the contacting. You've got to reach out to coaches. Sharon, how important are AP test scores? I think I covered that. Stuart, are dual enrollment courses viewed better or worse than AP or honor courses in high school? So I think it's a great question, because on one hand, you want to max out, if possible, the rigor. But so it's usually not an either or scenario. It's usually an and scenario with the kids that I see, meaning they load up on APs, and then when they can't take any more, then they go outside. I know that sounds kind of ambitious, but that's what a lot of kids do. In general, the more rigor, the better. I would say, though, if I had to choose one, I might go with community college courses, because if you think about what an admissions officer is evaluating, they're trying to figure out how well a kid's going to do at the college level. So if you can show that they've done very well at the college level, but community college, that's probably a little bit better than APs and IBs. But I would try to max out if you're thinking that, if that's the type of kid you have. Deborah, any tips for getting merit aid? Other counselors talk about institutional priorities, but give no advice on determining what they are. Interesting. Okay, I can do that. Should I look at 5-year plans? What departments are getting new buildings? I'm talking about priorities besides talk academic kids, athletes, band musicians, etc. Well, so I talked a little bit. It was sort of a Captain Obvious statement, but the schools that are easier to get into for your kid, that he doesn't have to scratch and claw his way into, or she, those are more likely to give merit aid. Flat out. So the high, super competitive, aspirational schools, much harder to get aid from. The question about institutional priorities, I think the best advice I can give you on that is you can call up the admissions officer and ask specifically, what are your underserved majors? Meaning majors that you're trying to recruit kids for. So it doesn't have to be any guesswork. They'll tell you. You might learn, my younger daughter's thinking about majoring in classics, for example. But that's almost always an underserved major, and that'd be a great major for her also. It's not, just for college by any means. So that'd be a good way to shortcut it. Just call them up. Nelda Guzman, my daughter's not yet in high school. She starts 9th grade in September. However, she'll be participating in very good high school summer level programs that she won scholarships for. Will those be considered when applying for college? If you're talking about the wins, the programs or the competitions or whatever that she got into, yeah, that's part of her body of work, but hopefully she continues to excel. Usually kids do. They have that ability to do that, and you'll have a lot more high school stuff to load up her resume with. So yes, those would be considered, but hopefully that's not the only thing, because by the time she's going to her senior year, those are going to be very remote in the past. So you don't want to make it seem like I haven't won anything for 4 years. That was, that was the old me. Thank you for that question. Okay, Atul. What looks more impressive to colleges in terms of rigor, AP or IB or community college courses? Yeah, I would, they're all impressive. If I had to pick one, community college, but it's usually an and, not an either. Gene, is the supplemental essay the one an individual college asks for? Yeah, colleges sometimes ask for multiple supplemental essays. They're not usually as long as the Common App. Sometimes they are little short answers, 140 characters, lists of things. But yeah, that's basically what I was talking about. Atul, if we sign up with Lockwood Prep, will my student be working with you specifically for his essays or with someone else? Well, I'm practically, I'm waffling a little bit, but I'm practically not taking on any more clients, by the way, personally. So I'm not available for most kids now, other than ones I've already taken on. However, I do have a team, including 2 former college admissions officers, actually 3 former college admissions officers who edit essays. They're actually better than I am, truth be told, because they worked at super competitive schools and they reviewed like 1,000 applications a year. Each application had 4 to 6 essays. So, I help the kids, I brainstorm and all that, but I always give final edits and revisions rights to our former admissions officers. Okay, Atul, if my student has to choose between doing the AP test or the SAT, which one should he choose? It's not a choice. You got to do both, depending on where you're applying. I would say both, flat out, not either or. Susan, do colleges decrease merit aid because you received outside scholarships? They, in general, no. They might decrease need-based aid because you now have more resources. You've won these scholarships. Susan, do grandparents' contributions count toward a student income for the next year? Currently, yes. In 2023, no. That is one of the good rule changes, one of the few good rule changes that happened as part of the CARES Act of January 21. Thank you for clarifying that, making me clarify. Lisa, what is big yet invisible question to answer on application, and how do you break early decision agreement? Okay, the big question that's invisible is, why should we take you compared to these other 90,000 applicants? I thought I mentioned that one, but I may have glossed over that. And the thing about early decision agreements is that 2 things. Number one, it's not legal, it's not binding, mostly because when a kid signs it, he lacks the legal ability because he hasn't reached the age of majority. A 17-year-old kid can't legally form a contract. So it's not legal from that standpoint, just so you understand that. That's me as a recovering attorney being very angry about that perception. Second thing is, if you read the early decision agreement that's used by every college, it says, it's not even buried in fine print. It says, if we let you in, you're going to come. However, if the financial aid offer is not adequate, then you can get out of this obligation. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but it says that right in there. So the issue is, if you decide, you are sole judge and jury, no one else, there's no objective standard. If you decide that they're not giving you enough money, then you can get out of the early decision agreement. And I promise it is no big deal to the college. It is probably going to be a big deal to your guidance counselor. Why? You can probably guess, because they care about their own agenda, their own little fiefdom, and kids who are going to possibly apply to that college next year. They're afraid that there's going to be some sort of weird taint, that the college that was, rejected after the early decision agreement was broken is going to hold it against that school, that district. You know, it could be private school, could be public school, whatever. Is that true? It's really not. But you know, if I were a guidance counselor or someone supervising guidance counselors, I think I would probably be a little weird about that too. Who cares? It's your highest and best, in my opinion. This is a longer answer, I think, than you for the compared to the question that you asked me. But in my opinion, your highest duty of loyalty is not to the district or to your guidance counselor or your administration, it's to your own family. So if you can't afford to go to the school, no one can force you to go to that school. Okay. Mini rant over. Atul, are small business owners impacted by the new FAFSA? That is interesting. As of now, I'm not sure. It looks like, because currently on the current FAFSA, the value of your business is zero for most business owners. Under the new rules, I'm not sure that the same exception is going to hold true. My gut feeling is that it will, and that there will not be any negative impact for business owners. That's my belief, but we'll see. Genshin. Early decision 1 versus early decision 2. Is there a big difference in chances of admission? Most of the time for most schools, no, it's about the same. Gina, do you work with kids who are special education kids? Yes, I actually have a specialist who works with us, who's very familiar with the college support services, and she used to run a resource room here at a local high school in Long Island for 30 years, and she's very good that way. So that's someone on our team. It's not me specifically, but yeah, absolutely. Okay, Sharon, can you still submit subject tests? I think there's a few that are still available to be submitted, but they're all going bye-bye. Gene, how do arts and music colleges view the value of a pre-college program? If you're talking about conservatories, I don't think they care so much about the academics as they do about the kids' talents. So if you're talking about pre-college academic programs, if you're talking about pre-college music programs, I still think it comes down to auditioning and all that. So I don't think the value is necessarily that high. Pat, if your ACT is in the middle of the college's range, is it better to submit the ACT score or not? Okay, so there's definitely a difference of opinion on that. I actually asked Mr. Betterton, who's the man I mentioned before, who made the software, who's on the admissions committee of Princeton for 30 years, and he actually agreed with me. This is about a year ago. We were chatting, and I said, if you are in the middle of the range and you don't submit your scores, does that, and they know that you were in a high school where kids took the tests, that's a key part of this. Doesn't that imply that you're not submitting the scores for an obvious reason? It's not because they're too high. It's because they weren't high enough. So my rule is, and he agreed with me, is if you have a score that's in the middle or at the higher end of the range, I would submit. But with the lower end of the range, I don't think I would submit. James, did you just say that you need to take both the ACT and the SAT? No. A lot of kids do that. I think the question was about APs, not ACT. AP, Advanced Placement Exams. Zuma, when do the new essay prompts come up for the incoming class for 2022? Zuma, you're in luck. They've been out for about 3 months. Just go to the search for commonapp.org and you will see, or search Common App essay prompts, and you will see on their blog, they released them, I want to say in March, maybe. So they are out. Officially, the Common Application gets released August 1st, but they told us what the essay prompts are ahead of time. They do that every year. They are the same except for one new essay prompt, which is something about gratitude. It's a little new agey for my tastes. That is now in there. Okay. So any other questions? Last call. Atul, sorry, I missed what you said earlier. In addition to your book, what is the other book you recommend for paying for college? There are no other books besides mine. No. There's a book published by the Princeton Review called Paying for College or something by Calman Chaney, Chany, or Cal Chaney. And he's got a new edition coming out. It'll probably be a while, but I would wait for that new edition because it covers the new proposed rules changes, actual rules changes, and the proposed ones. Okay, so I think that is it. Let me just double check. Nothing snuck in here. Genshin, do you review applications and recommend whether the student should try or not for a reach school for early decision? Yeah, totally. I mean, that is it's all about strategies, right? And there's a couple dozen strategic decisions that have to be made. So I don't review applications like as a standalone thing. It's part of our comprehensive consulting packages. But yeah, we absolutely look at all these things and more to figure out. It's about giving kids the best odds of getting into the schools they want to get into. So absolutely. Deborah says you crack me up. Gina says, haha. Deborah the voice, I believe that's the Deborah who's on. Voice actor Deborah Sperling. Yes, good. All right, that is it. So if you have any questions, you want to reach out, you can either click on that black button for a college strategy session, or you could go to getcollegeplan.com if you are new, if you've never spoken before, or you could email me if you have any quick questions. Thank you very much for being for participating and asking these questions. This is great. I always say I should do more of these, and life gets in the way, and I don't do more. But I will. We're going to be speaking a lot more. I'm going to do another presentation on financial aid. I think I'm going to do one on the essay. We've got a few more things cooking that we're cooking up for the next couple of weeks. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great night, everyone.